What up, people? The holiday season is here, and a lot of people are wondering what games they should buy for the Nintendo Switch. With so many options available, you might not know what's worth your time, but don't worry, I got you covered. To help people out, I broke this video up into sections. The first section will be known as Essentials that I feel you can buy for any and everyone, and they'll probably enjoy those games. After that, all the games will be separated into these game genres that are listed on the screen now. That way, it'll be easy to find games for people with specific tastes and preferences. Also, if you're new to the channel, I make videos on single player games with a heavy focus on RPGs, as you'll see later on in this video. If that's something that interests you and you end up enjoying this video, consider subscribing and hitting that like button to help with the algorithm. Now, I know you have some games to buy, so I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get started with the Nintendo Switch Essentials. These first couple games are the closest things I can say are must-buys that you're going to see on this list. First up, we have Mario Odyssey, which I still will argue is the best game on the Nintendo Switch, but I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority on that one. Most people have played a Mario game in their life, so this won't be a tough sell. What separates Mario Odyssey from other games is the new capture mechanic involving his new hat Cappy. By throwing his hat onto certain enemies, he now controls them and can use their abilities to assist throughout the kingdom he's currently exploring. Speaking of kingdoms, that's really where this game shines. Going to a new kingdom almost felt like a new game each time. One minute you're in a desert with skeletons, a kingdom made of food, a kingdom underwater, or most notably, New York City. The level of variety between these kingdoms is very impressive, and I can almost guarantee that you'll miss something the first time exploring these kingdoms, which lends itself to a lot of replayability. Anybody just getting a Switch should put this game at the top of their wish list. Next, we have Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and also Tears of the Kingdom. Even though I prefer Mario Odyssey, most people will say that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are two of, if not the two best games available on the Switch, and for good reason. With Metacritic scores of 97 and 96 respectively, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are two of the highest rated games of all time, let alone Nintendo games. The reason I have these two together is because I'm recommending both for slightly different reasons. If you think the person you're buying this for would only play one of these because they're pretty long, I would recommend the sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. They'll miss out on some story stuff, but they'll enjoy the better game. Otherwise, start with Breath of the Wild. But either way, I know they won't be disappointed. While my list of games are mostly single player focused, there's going to be some multiplayer and co-op games sprinkled in here and there, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is at the top of that list. This party brawler takes iconic characters like Mario, Link, Pikachu, along with 67 Fire Emblem characters and let them duke it out. You can play against friends locally or create private rooms to fight privately online, or they can fight online against other players across the world. This game also has plenty of single player content if multiplayer isn't a top priority. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has over 80 plus characters to choose from, coming from franchises such as Fire Emblem, Metal Gear Solid, Street Fighter, and even Final Fantasy. With such a large roster of characters, plus all the content and quality of life features packaged into this game, this will be an easy sell for most Switch owners. Okay, that's all the essential games that I personally have. If you're only going to be buying one or two games for someone who has a Switch, just pick from that list and call it a day. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, for the rest of these games, I broke them up into genres because I figured that would be the easiest way to find games for specific people. So RPGs, action games, and visual novels will all be in different sections. And while I went into somewhat detail with the essential games, to spare you some time, I'm going to be going through the rest of these games a little bit quicker. Platformers are going to be the first genre of games we're going to talk about, and what better place to start than with one of the newest Mario games, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. While I personally think Super Mario Odyssey is the overall better game because of exploration, if you prefer the old 2D Mario, then I would recommend this over Odyssey. But if you're like me and you prefer 3D Mario games like Odyssey, then I would also recommend Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. It's a port of the Wii U game plus the additional Bowser Fury, which is an added campaign featuring another open world to play around in. If Mario isn't your thing for whatever reason, maybe try Kirby in the Forgotten Land, which is another 3D platformer. Kirby's trademark ability is sucking up enemies and using their powers to attack them, but now you have little open worlds to do it in. When it comes to 3D platformers, I would put Forgotten Land up there with Mario Odyssey as far as just pure fun factor. Also, while Mario is obviously kid-friendly, Kirby I would argue is even better for smaller children or people trying to get into gaming for the first time, so keep that in mind. And just like Mario, if you prefer 2D, you can always give Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe a shot. It's a remake of the 2011 game, but it's just as good as any modern platformer today. Sonic Mania is a platformer made to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Sonic the Hedgehog series and also pay homage to the old school Sega Genesis games. It's regarded as one of the best Sonic games made in the past decade and a return to form for the Sega mascot, so definitely a good choice for Sonic fans or fans of the old school era. If you're looking for more of a challenge, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is known for its fun but difficult levels. I'm being serious, by the way. Some of these levels are very rage-inducing. And speaking of rage-inducing, Cuphead is another popular platformer that has caused many broken controllers and possibly friendships. Don't let the adorable art style fool you. This game is not for kids. And honestly, they're not for most adults either. But if you're a patient person who likes to learn from their mistakes, this game is definitely worth it. There's a couple of remake bundles worth checking out if you want a good bang for your buck, with the first one being the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. This Switch game is a made-from-the-ground remake of the first 3 games of the Crash Bandicoot series, which I think is a really good deal. You're essentially getting 3 full games for $40. Same thing with the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which is a remake of the first 3 Spyro games. You can't really go wrong with either, but I would say that Spyro games are a little bit easier and better if you're buying this for little kids as opposed to Crash Bandicoot. Okay, now that I got all the platforms out the way, let's talk about some action games which are for fans of fast-paced combat and decision making. I think Metroid Prime Remastered will be a good choice if you want to stick to Nintendo exclusives. This game is a remake of the GameCube's Metroid Prime. While not really being a first-person shooter, fans of that genre may enjoy this. Astral Chain is also another good choice. It's a hack-and-slash action game similar to that of Devil May Cry, but also adds in some detective work as well. If you're big on story or narrative, you might not like this one, but otherwise it's a very stylish game with some very fun and deep combat mechanics. Speaking of stylish, Bayonetta 3 is also a game you might want to consider, as it was made by Platinum Games, who are the same people that made Astral Chain. Good combat is kind of their thing, so look up their Switch library if you want some good action games in general. However, unlike Astral Chain, Bayonetta 3 is rated M for mature, so definitely don't buy this for children or any elderly people. Well, your grandfather might like it. Moving on to some indies in the genre, Katana Zero is one of my favorite action games to come out on the Switch. You control an assassin rightfully named Subject Zero, and your goal on every level is to kill all the enemies in the various rooms. The enemy gets hit once, they die. If you get hit once, you die, and then you have to start all over from the beginning of the first room. The gameplay, story, and music are all phenomenal, especially the music, and for only $15, you can't really go wrong. Also, keep in mind that this game and other indies I talk about are all digital for the most part. There are physical copies of these games, but usually not that many, so the prices are sky high online. So if you're buying these for someone else, you'll have to use the Nintendo eShop. Moving on to other indies, Hollow Knight is good if you want that Metroidvania style action game. Dead Cells is also a favorite by many who want a little difficulty in their games. I also think you should consider Hades. The game has you play as the son of Hades as he attempts to escape from the underworld to reach Mount Olympus. Its combat, soundtrack, and writing have all seen critical acclaim, and with there being a god mode added to the game, it can be played by people who want a real challenge or just want to have some fun and enjoy the story. Highly recommend. Okay, now we're moving on to strategy games for fans of turn-based and tactical combat. And what better place to start from than with Fire Emblem Three Houses. Three Houses has you play as a professor at a school where all the students are divided into, 3 houses. You'll pick one of the houses to lead, and based on your choice, you'll get one of the 3, technically 4 story paths to play through. In all Fire Emblem games, you control characters who are known as units, who have all their own strengths and weaknesses and weapons and magic they prefer. But what's different with 3 houses is you can pretty much make your unit any class you want. If you have a character who's an archer, but you want them to be a mage or a healer, go ahead. They may not be the most efficient at it, but it's definitely a viable option. There's also a big social aspect with 3 houses, similar to that of Persona 5, which I'll talk about later. Where you're not on the battlefield with your students, you'll be spending time with them in the monastery, developing them as students and units. Eating lunch together, training them, and teaching them specific information based off their weapon choice is all things you have to do to make sure they don't fall behind and be too weak to fight for you. And while I personally didn't mind doing that stuff, it wasn't everyone's favorite thing to do. So if that social stuff sounds like a drag, I would recommend Fire Emblem Engage, which is way more linear in its gameplay and does away with all that other stuff. Even though I prefer 3 houses overall, the combat in Engage is much better in my opinion. Also, unlike 3 houses, your units have predetermined skills and weapons that they use, and you're better off sticking with that. You can change them to other classes, but the downsides are much higher. Also, most people will agree that the story and writing in Engage is much weaker than that of Fire Emblem 3 Houses. So, while both amazing games in their own right, if you need a good story in your games, go with Fire Emblem 3 Houses. But if good gameplay is what you care about the most, Fire Emblem Engage is the better choice. If you want something similar to Fire Emblem, I would check out Triangle Strategy, which was made by Square Enix. You create strategies and control units just like Fire Emblem, but you also get some nice pixel graphics to look at as well. Keep in mind that a common complaint for this game was that it was very story focused and they went long times in between battles because of all the cutscenes and story narrative. So if that's not really your thing, maybe pass on this one. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp is also a good strategy game to check out, as it's a remake of the first 2 titles in the Advance Wars series, which are Advance Wars and Advance Wars 2 Black Hole Rising. If you just want pure strategy and not have to worry about any of that RPG stuff that comes with Fire Emblem, like leveling up and customization, then this is a much better choice. Wargroove and Wargroove 2 are also very fun games that are similar to Advance Wars, so if you end up liking Reboot Camp, check these out as well. Valkyria Chronicles is a fun strategy RPG that's in the same vein of XCOM that focuses on attacking from cover and third-person shooting. It looks a little dated, but it's still really fun. If you want something more modern in the same vein, check out Persona 5 Tactica, which takes that XCOM Valkyria gameplay and adds that Persona style and charm. You're going to hear Persona a lot in this list, so brace yourselves. I also want to show some love to SteamWorld Heist, which is a strategy game in the very underrated and underappreciated SteamWorld series. Heist also focuses on attacking from cover, but it also uses guns to aim and ricochet off walls to attack the enemy who are also hiding behind cover. It's a really cool gameplay mechanic, and I recommend Heist to strategy fans in general, but especially ones who maybe are on a tight budget. Next, we have games that focus more on narrative and telling an overall story. These are good for people who are huge TV or movie fans who want an interactive story to play through. Not much gameplay in these games, so if that's something that you need, just skip to the next section. No hard feelings, I promise. The first game I want to recommend is the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy. The Ace Attorney games are always fun as you get cases to solve, talk to witnesses, discover clues, and try to win your case in the courtroom. Very easy games to get into, and again, perfect for people who are really into crime TV shows and stuff like that. If you're into murder mysteries, horror, or those serial killer documentaries, the Danganronpa games are all good choices. These games involve students being locked in a school, and the only way they can be released is if they kill one of the other students and get away with it. Once a student is killed, a trial will happen, and if you find the killer, they'll be murdered. But if they get away with it, everyone but the killer will be murdered. These games tend to be a bit long, but well worth it if this is your kind of thing. Life is Strange True Colors is also another really fun game that is choice-based, meaning the choices you make throughout the game will change the story and what happens to certain characters. I'm a big fan of choice-based games, and True Colors is one of my favorites in this underrated genre. Can't say enough good things about it. Another good choice are the Oxenfree games. They're more sci-fi focused, and both games have multiple endings depending on the decisions you make. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think these games are actually on Netflix, so if you or someone you're buying games for has Netflix already, you can probably play these for free. What Remains of Edith Finch also has an amazing story to tell. The story follows the 17-year-old Edith Finch, the last surviving member of her family, as she returns to her ancestral home for the first time in 7 years. Re-exploring the house, she uncovers her family's mysterious past and learns about the series of deaths that eventually caused the complete collapse of her family structure. Edith Finch does an amazing job of incorporating gameplay to tell this incredible story. I rarely get emotional playing video games, and this game achieved that, and I still remember the story to this day. This is a must-buy for fans of good writing and amazing storytelling. Next section on this list are cozy games, or as I like to call them, palate cleansers. Basically games that are meant to be relaxing, stress-free, and for some people, even therapeutic. Animal Crossing New Horizons should be the first game you check out. You'll be on an island with a bunch of little animal villagers, and you'll just spend your time building a town for them to live in. Fishing, catching bugs, going to the museum, and swimming are all things you can do in this game, and it's really fun. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the vibes. Stardew Valley is a similar game as you're tasked with revitalizing the old farm your grandfather left you. This is one of the more popular indie games ever made and very addicting for people once they really got into it. There's a game called Unpacking that's literally just you unpacking boxes and putting them away in your various rooms. I know it sounds boring, but it was something about the simplicity of this game that I really enjoyed. It's kind of hard to explain. Coffee Talk could have probably been in the visual novel section, but whatever. You play as a barista and you make coffee for repeat customers as they tell you what's going on in their life. The reason I put this in the cozy game section was because of the music, plus the process of making the coffee as the story played out was very relaxing. Let's Build a Zoo is a game where, you guessed it, you build a zoo. This would be good for fans of games like The Sims or just city builder games in general. Power Wash Simulator is also a very self-explanatory game. You literally just power wash buildings and objects. This was the game I thought of when I used the term therapeutic. It's just a game you can shut your brain off and enjoy. Next, I'm going to talk about some monster taming games just for a little bit. Obviously, we have to start with a Pokemon game, and I would recommend buying either Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet. These are the latest mainline Pokemon games in the franchise, and the first one's to be open world. After a certain point, you can pretty much go wherever you want and fight gym leaders in whatever order you want. The games caught some flack for having a lot of graphical and technical issues, but overall, they're really fun games to play, especially for kids. If you prefer that old school 2D Pokemon from the Game Boy days, Coromon would be a good game to check out. It basically takes that old red and blue look and modernizes it and adds a lot of quality of life features that monster taming and RPG fans will appreciate. Also, the animations in the game are amazing. Nexomon Extinction is a really good choice as well. Nexomon, I always say, has some of the best monster designs in a non-Pokemon game that I've ever seen, and you should probably check it out just for that alone. Temtem is a monster catching MMO. This is probably one of the more difficult games in this genre to date. Nothing too crazy, but definitely worth checking out if you find Pokemon games overall just a little too easy. Monster Hunter Stories 2 would also be a good option. You'll hatch your monsters from eggs and have them fight in a rock, paper, scissors style format. I have the first game on my 3DS and enjoyed it a lot, and the people who played both say it's definitely worth your time. A game that just came out is Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, which is the newest entry into the Dragon Quest Monsters series. The game already has been praised for the surprisingly deep battle customization and monster fusion mechanics, so if you're looking for one of the newer games in this genre, check this one out first. Okay, last we have the biggest category, and that's RPGs, and honestly it would be a little bit bigger if I took some of the games from the strategy and other genres and put it in this one, but whatever. Now, there's a lot of games in this section, so they're not all going to get the attention they deserve. But these are some of the best RPGs the Nintendo Switch has to offer. There's plenty of more RPGs I could have talked about, but these are the ones I think you should start out with if you're buying games for friends and family. First up, we have Persona 5 Royal. Being an enhanced version of the 2017 game, Royal's gameplay involves going through palaces as you fight and recruit personas in turn-based combat, solve puzzles, and ultimately defeat the boss of each palace with the personas you recruit and fuse. When you're not doing that, you'll be spending time in the real world where you'll be going to school, studying, working, and just enjoying the fun things to do in the city. You'll also be spending time with confidants, which will give you rewards and perks that will benefit you when you go back in the dungeons to fight. Persona 5 Royal is regarded by many, including myself, as being one of the best RPGs ever made and definitely one of the most stylish. Fans of turn-based combat will love this game, especially if they want a game that will last them, as this game is very, very long. Shin Megami Tensei 5 was made by the same people who made Persona, and for a lot of people, it's just as good. It's a lot harder than Persona, so keep that in mind. I always joke to say that this game is what happens when you take Pokemon and make it a Dark Souls game, but I'm not really joking. The game can be pretty brutal. I think there's a difficulty slider in the game. I don't remember fully, but I think so. Sea of Stars is another RPG that I highly recommend. It released this year and is nominated for Best RPG at the Game Awards. Its art and gameplay are all inspired by old school RPGs like Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG. It's not too difficult and doesn't require any grinding, so it's perfect for someone trying to dip their toe into the RPG genre. While on the topic of Super Mario RPG, a remake of the SNES classic just released recently, so if you know someone who played that game when they were younger, this could also be a good option. Sticking with remakes, Link's Awakening is the most adorable game on this list, as you get an updated version of this RPG classic that makes it look like you're playing a game built from a toy box. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is a remake of the 2011 game and the first of 3 games in the Xenoblade series. It took me a while to like the combat, but once it clicks, it's a phenomenal game and series. Chained Echoes is also another amazing RPG with an overdrive mechanic that I still say is one of the best mechanics in any RPG I've played to date. Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 are both really good turn-based RPGs, as you'll control 8 characters as you play through their individual stories, and they travel together as well. If you're only going to pick one, go with Octopath Traveler 2, as it fixed some gameplay and quality of life issues the first game had. There's a couple ports that I think I should mention, the first one being Witcher 3. Most people, myself included, has this is the best RPG ever made, and this is a must-buy for RPG fans. It's my favorite game of all time, and it's perfect for fans of fantasy and well-written characters. Disco Elysium is also an amazing game that not a lot of people know about, despite it winning Best RPG at the 2019 Game Awards. It's a point-and-click game that focuses heavily on writing, narrative, and characters. Fans of well-told stories like myself will really enjoy this. Also might be good for avid book readers as well. Divinity Original Sin 2 is an amazing turn-based RPG made by Larian Studios, who are also the makers of Baldur's Gate 3, which by the time this comes out, may have just won Game of the Year. Divinity Original Sin 2 is also one of my favorite all-time RPGs. The way the game handles its storytelling and weaves characters and decisions from side and main missions together is incredible. Also, the way the game makes the class and race you pick for your character crucial is really cool. Fans of Dungeons & Dragons or the Game of Thrones books might want to give this game a try. The last RPG I want to talk about is actually a JRPG and the grandfather of all turn-based JRPGs with Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. This is the 11th entry into the iconic series and this enhanced port of the original Dragon Quest XI. This new version comes with extra content, faster battle speeds, new orchestral versions of the soundtrack, and being able to switch between 3D and 2D game modes. When it comes to JRPGs, Dragon Quest XI doesn't try to do anything new or innovative, but still gives you everything you want from a JRPG. And while this isn't the best RPG on this list, I feel when it comes to everything that goes into a good RPG, like story, character designs, gameplay, music, and also being long enough to enjoy for a while, Dragon Quest XI is one of the best places to start for fans of RPGs. Alright guys, that's all the games I want to talk about in this buying guide. I'm sorry I didn't go into more detail about a lot of the games, but I didn't want this video to be 3 hours long. Also, I know I left out some amazing games on the Switch, but I feel like these are some of the top games in their respective genres that people should look at when buying games for themselves or someone else. But I'm curious, what games would you recommend people buy as a gift during the holiday season? Let me know in the comments so I can see what I missed. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with the channel. Happy holidays!